One of the most lasting legacies of Greek and Roman philosophy is the continued relevance of Stoicism. You might be familiar with Stoicism. It's a philosophical position suggesting that all that is necessary for happiness is virtue, and that the best way to live your life is to become detached from those things out of your control and focus only on cultivating virtue. Stoicism was created in ancient Athens, but became popular in Rome as notable figures like the philosopher Seneca and the emperor Marcus Aurelius wrote books on the topic. Their books became popular among the citizens of Rome and are still widely read today. Stoicism has had many revivals throughout the years, from its rediscovery in the Renaissance to its recent popularity. However, Stoicism is not without its critics. Some Neoplatonist philosophers during the Roman Empire were very critical of Stoicism. Many saw it as self-contradictory and reductive. They also saw the Stoics as often hypocritical. Augustine of Hippo, a Christian bishop who was himself a follower of Neoplatonism, was one of the most vocal critics of Stoicism. He wrote a response to the Stoics in his magnum opus, The City of God. This book was written at the end of the Roman Empire, shortly after the city of Rome was sacked by barbarians. Augustine wrote it in response to critics of Christianity who blamed Christians for the fall of the Roman Empire. Augustine argued that rather than Christians being to blame for the fall of Rome, it was in fact the pagans who had built poor philosophical foundations, and that they were destined to fail. One of the most striking parts of City of God is Augustine's critique of ancient Greek and Roman philosophy, suggesting that all of the main schools of thought from these civilizations were founded on absurd beliefs. Now, Augustine took a uniquely Christian view here, arguing that the fundamental problem was that Stoicism and other philosophies looked for the supreme good in the world, when in reality the supreme good could only be found with God. However, while this is an important part of his argument, it is not the only part, and many aspects of his argument can apply to Stoicism even without a Christian perspective. Augustine agrees with Stoicism's other critics that it is a self-contradictory position. He first argues that the Stoic conception of virtue necessarily shows that the world cannot contain perfect good, since the only rule of the virtues is to fight against evils. Virtues like temperance, prudence, justice, and fortitude, which the Stoics regard as the highest good in the world, all seem to be based on fighting against different vices. And importantly, it seems that many of these struggles are against internal vices, not just against the vices of the world. Because of this, it seems like the Stoic ideal of virtue as perfectly sufficient for happiness is impossible, since virtue cannot fully overcome vice. There doesn't seem to be any way to achieve the perfection that Stoics pursue with the virtues they prioritize. However, this is not Augustine's only problem with Stoicism. His main problem is actually a contradiction that the Stoics themselves seem to recognize, that virtue cannot possibly overcome natural evils like illness or suffering. It is essential to Stoicism that a virtuous person can be happy in spite of these problems by simply remaining strong in virtue. However, many Stoics acknowledge that there are situations where this is impossible. Importantly, many Stoics argue that there are cases where suicide is the only option, since some suffering is inescapable and virtue cannot possibly overcome it. Augustine cites Stoics who mention severe disability as reasons for suicide. He also cites the story of the great Stoic philosopher Cato, who committed suicide after his side lost the civil war against Caesar. Cato argued to his friends that it was better to die than to be forced to live in slavery. If this is true, then it seems that virtue cannot guarantee happiness in certain situations. It is only conditional. It seems then that the classical Stoics did not really perceive virtue as a guarantee of happiness. It might be a useful path there, but external circumstances can make life unlivable. Is this a good enough reason to reject Stoicism? Augustine and his fellow Neoplatonists certainly thought so. It does not seem that the contradictions can simply be ignored. They point to a great flaw in the heart of Stoic philosophy. Thank you for watching. Please check out our Substack for more content, and like and subscribe to help support us in our project.